any form-based practice area more than it will affect a non-form-based practice. Like, you're not going to be able to be in federal court writing briefs using AI. Like, not even close.
You're listening to Alternative Investor Mastermind, where we do a deep dive on alternative investment opportunities and the lifestyle it can create. Join Jack Krupe as he presents actionable tips and tricks in doing passive real estate away from mainstream strategies. Go beyond the usual fix and flips and try less explored yet rewarding investing ventures, from multifamily properties, mobile homes to cryptocurrencies. Do not miss this opportunity to escape traditional assets and finally create wealth without Wall Street. Now your host, Jack.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Alternative Investor Mastermind. Really excited today for our guest, Chris Johnsen. I've known Chris from a few different mastermind groups, and we've known each other for a few years. Always love chatting about business, life, investing. So Chris, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, Jack. Appreciate it.
So, we've known each other a few years, but I'd love for the audience to get to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background.
So we talk about kind of my financial career type background. And I'll start here. And you probably don't know this about me, Jack, unless I went off on a tangent one day we were hanging out. So I have always been obsessed, and I teach my kids about this, and I hope they have the same obsession, but about making money with money. It's like growing crops, like planting seeds and seeing them grow and reaping the fruit of your harvest. So I'm pretty sure, because I see my own kids and I see other children, other people, that I was like the weirdest kid out there. And anytime I was given a gift of money or allowance, I didn't spend a dime. I didn't go spend it on ice cream or video games or whatever. I put it aside. And then finally, when I was able to get a bank account, I got a bank account. I just loved the idea of interest. Like, I'd have my mom drive by the bank, right? Because you couldn't go online then. Drive by the bank to check the balance of my bank account, which I'm sure grew by like a penny or two in interest. And I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. And then when I was about 12 or 13, my mom was with a stockbroker. And so he helped me get a custodial account. And I invested in this home builder in Miami. I'm from South Florida originally. And then Hurricane Andrew, like a year later, decimated that Homestead, Miami area. And it was, just luck. But that home builder, like, their stock shot through the roof because then they were building homes for all these people down there. So I did quite well on that stock and just kind of fell in love with investing even more. And going back to the technology, I remember I'd walk the dog every morning for my allowance money, and I would stop. I did spend money on this. I would stop by the newspaper machine and buy a newspaper so I could flip to the part where they show the price of stocks and I could check my stock. Nowadays it's so much easier, but I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. So I think that kind of frames who I am today. I'm a lawyer, and most people see me as a lawyer, but I view myself as a business person first. I've been an investor my whole life in one way or another. My first career was really in real estate, and I majored in real estate and also have a degree in finance. It's a double major, and just happened to have a law degree, and I've leveraged that law degree to help businesses even more. It's just a fantastic tool to get in there and help businesses with what they need to do to succeed.
So I mean, you had this early on. As far as law school goes, was that just sort of a means to an end? Was it part of the plan, or was it like need to make sure you have a way to make enough money to invest, and it was one of the just one of the ways to guarantee? And obviously, there's a lot of other benefits of being a lawyer from the contract finance side. There's plenty of times I wish I went to law school when I'm in the middle of a real estate deal.
So that's a great question too. Totally not the normal person. So I'm sure 90% of people that went to law school would say, I watched Law and Order, or I watched this movie and I thought it was the coolest thing ever and I wanted to be a lawyer. Never had that desire. Never thought it was cool. I mean, I thought the movies were fun and cool, but never saw myself doing that. No lawyers in the family. Didn't know any lawyers, but what I did know, well, other than the ones we hired. So I said I was in real estate, and I worked with lawyers as part of being in real estate. So the company I worked for was redeveloping retail strip centers. It was commercial properties. That was my first involvement in real estate. We used attorneys. They helped us out with various things. And I saw the value in what they provided. I saw that they made good money providing that value. And one thing my mom did say to me as a kid was an education is something that no one could ever take away from you. So when it came time to graduating from business school, I was like, should I keep going or not? And I'm like, well, if I'm going to do something, I might as well just do it now. Otherwise, I'll never do it. So I decided to go to law school for all those reasons I mentioned, but I never planned on actually working as a lawyer. I was going to go back and develop real estate down in Southeast Florida. I had my eye towards building townhomes and this and that. And again, fruition, luck, I graduated in 2008. Fortunately, someone convinced me to go work for a firm because he said, look, they don't teach you how to be a lawyer in law school. They just teach you how to think like a lawyer. You really need to go work for a couple of years. So I was like, okay, I'll work for a couple of years. So luckily I had a job lined up because when the whole economy went in the shitter in 2008, I had a job, and thank God I wasn't developing real estate at that time because that wouldn't have been fun either.
Yeah, that was a rough one. So I got out in 2001. Similar. I thought I was going to be. I thought I was actually going to be more in the technology industry because I was.
Of course, it was 2001, man.
Yeah, it was wild. But I also did the stock thing. I think we had, whether it was like, I think it was like called enrichment or something like that, where like some of I guess I was one of the smarter kids. We would like kind of get pulled out of certain classes, and we did like a stock picking thing with the newspaper. And I think I rode Nike. And I think
nice.
Won one of the little kind of competitions of kind of like what the stock did. It was, again, basically because I was a fan of Michael Jordan. I think I just picked Nike. It wasn't like I did deep analysis at 10 or 12 years old.
That's okay. I remember in my MBA program, we were doing case studies on different companies. For whatever reason, I picked eBay, so I was completely wrong in thinking that company would have been more successful because it wasn't. At the time, I thought it was really cool, and I sold things on eBay and everything. But this group in our class, and I'm looking back at it right now, picked Apple. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me, Apple? And I think he picked it because he liked Apple products. And I'm like, Apple? I mean, Apple's Apple. And I was like in 2000, well, it was before they had the iPhone, and it was before Apple as you know it today. I'm sure if you would have invested in their stock when these kids did this presentation, it would have gone much higher.
Yeah, just that was an incredible. I mean, there was a point Apple was potentially going to go out of business, mid 2000s, and it's really one of the greatest turnaround stories of all time.
Right.
But, wish I knew. I've never really been a market timer, and I dabble here and there in the stock market, but I've really been primarily real estate, and likely will continue. Although I do enjoy options trading on the side.
You do options? Oh my God, no! See, I'm not smart enough to do options. You're smarter than me. Those scare me. I'm all about long-term investing and time weight averaging. I don't try to beat the market either. Just a little bit at a time, over time.
Well, that's actually the option strategy. I'm not buying options and gambling. I'm actually selling options of multiple small positions, and basically you take advantage of the time decay. When you're selling options, you're essentially the house or the casino, and there's a premium built in for selling options. You're really selling insurance. So obviously you need to be careful, but there's some strategies I follow that I didn't make these up. I'm following sort of other somewhat proven strategies of really providing liquidity and providing insurance to the market, where all those other gamblers, all the Wall Street bets gamblers are gambling on things. And it makes sense that you charge a premium. And the actual volatility of the stocks is historically, 5 to 10% less than what they charge when you sell the options. So it's not really as riskier as gambling when you're on that side of it. And that's just something I just kind of fell into in Puerto Rico. Just being down here, there's a lot of stock traders, a lot of options traders here because of there's no short-term capital gains in Puerto Rico. So a lot of people that have, pretty sophisticated options trading strategies, and some that just do pretty simple stuff and just, take advantage of the tax benefits.
It's awesome.
So obviously you had an interest in finance and money very early on. What was your first real estate deal?
First real estate deal was a Winn-Dixie anchored strip center in Birmingham, Alabama.
Wow, that was you jumped right in, and that was as an investor yourself too, not just representing.
No, not a personal investor. That was me working for a company that was doing the deal.
Gotcha.
As an investor, that's my first real estate deal. Homes don't count, right? So this is going to be investment producing property.
I guess home can count if it's a good story. I mean,
Wow,
if you
that
started
story
buying in the mid
sucks.
2000s.
I'm not going to do that one. No, that one. The story is great because I actually broke even after like 8 years or 7 or 6 or something being in South Florida. I guess the lesson there was, and I still think I did the right thing. I rented it and I refused to fire sale that house. I'm like, I will not sell that sucker for a loss. And what I did realize here's a lesson, maybe someone will get something from this. I actually learned this from my grandmother after the bust, and I wish she would have told me this sooner. She's been in real estate for many years, and she said condos and townhomes are more like a commodity. They're fungible, right? So everyone says each piece of real estate is unique, and technically that's correct, but fungible product is like you take one barrel of oil, you put it together, you have 2 barrels of oil, you don't really know where one went, the other one went, it's all kind of mixes in with the other. I think that is generally true when it comes to condos and townhomes, because when you're in a situation where there's a lot of them on the market, what really distinguishes you? Maybe the ocean view, yes. Maybe the corner one, yes. But if you're all interior the same thing, it's the same thing. So the only thing that's going to distinguish it is price, whereas a single family home or something of that nature is more of a unique product and is less fungible. And I think for that reason is less susceptible to price decline. And I think that pretty much was true down in the Southeast Florida area where condos got crushed, all this stuff got crushed. But besides the fact that, if you were the 10% of the people that still lived in that condo, you were getting 100% of the HOA bill. That must have been super ouch for a lot of people. The first real estate investments, cash flow producing, was a single family home that I purchased for rental purposes in Houston, Texas. These deals don't exist anymore. I bought a brand new home for $150,000 and was renting it at a 10. So I was getting a 10 cap rate on a single family home, and then made money on the capital gains on the tail of it. That was a very good investment. But you can't get a 10 cap anymore.
Yeah, it's just doesn't exist. What I don't know if I even asked you this, but so you grew up in South Florida. What drew you to Houston?
My wife, so a woman. So we met down in Southeast Florida. I was in Orlando at the time when she proposed moving to Houston. She was pregnant, and she's like, what do you think about going to Houston, where I'm from? And I wasn't too enthralled with Orlando. I would have moved back to South Florida eventually. And I looked at two things, really, the price of homes. So I was able to buy a home in Houston in a beautiful suburb on an acre property, big house. It was like $400,000 I paid for it. And that would have been well over $1 million in Florida. Otherwise, the cost of living was less and people were making more. So that's like the ultimate to increase your spread for increasing wealth is to make more, spend less. And what was I giving up? I was giving up the beach, and I figured, I could pay $200 and fly to Cozumel or fly down to Costa Rica if I want to. I was so busy at the time, I didn't have much time to go to the beach every day anyway. And finally, Houston's the fourth largest legal market in the United States. So still, even if you're in Miami, it's not going to be one of the largest legal markets. It would be a pretty sexy, you get like that kind of South American international kind of business stuff, which would be really interesting. But Houston, like legit, cut your teeth, Fortune 500 companies. And at that point in my life was very attractive to me. And I still love it. It's still a great place for business. And that's very important for me.
Yeah, and Houston is still one of the fastest growing cities. I think, what is it, the fourth? It's also the fourth or fifth largest city in the country. You probably know better than me, but I follow an economist named Peter Zeihan, and he put up a YouTube video a couple months ago just about how bullish he was on Houston, between the oil and gas, the petrochemical that comes from the oil and gas, the space program, the port. There's probably 10 other things you could list, but it really seems like Houston's just got so many positive things happening for it.
You did mention a lot of good things, and so I'm impressed you mentioned the port, because that probably is about 20 to 30% of our economy. It's a massive port, and ever since they widened the Panama Canal, it's allowed for more goods to come in through the Port of Houston. The one thing you missed was the largest medical center in the world.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And actually,
it's quite impressive. And MD Anderson's here. People come in worldwide for cancer treatment, for other things.
Yeah, well, hopefully neither of us needs it, but it's good that it's there. And one of my friends from business school actually is a doctor there, and he's also invested in my fund. So it's an amazing place. So let's talk a little bit about your practice. You have a pretty unique law practice, in my opinion, and kind of the wave of the future of many law practices, I think. So just tell us a little bit about how you set up your practice.
So I was fortunate enough to start at some of the best, most prestigious firms in the country, if not the world. And I did some really high quality work, working with great clients and a great structure. So there were a lot of great things that I learned in BigLaw. That's what they generally call it, BigLaw. Just like you would have the big four, the four accounting firms. In the legal industry, you have BigLaw. But there were a lot of things that I saw were bad business practice. I was constantly analyzing these things the whole time. One of them was the fact that we had all these fancy offices that were beautiful, they were prestigious, and they might have sucked me in as a younger attorney. But then after a while, the allure faded, and I realized none of it mattered. First of all, no one wants to go to downtown to meet with you, because it's a pain in the ass unless you're used to it and you go downtown all the time. And it's a waste of money. And I had like, when I was a partner, I had a corner office. I mean, it was beautiful and it was exciting to get it. But I bought like, a sitting area so clients can come in and we could sit and talk. Not one time did a client come in, sit and talk at my little sitting area. So it just wasn't used. It was dead space. And, every year, even though these firms were profitable, but every year, without a doubt, there would be some disappointment amongst the associates or the other attorneys that they wouldn't get as high of a bonus as they thought they should get. Okay. And so I'm saying, well, what are we spending money on? We're spending on these offices that clients don't come into. We're spending it on inflated support staff that's, in large part useless, that we think we need, but we really don't. We're not leveraging technology. We say we are, but in reality, when you get in the black box, we're very old school about the way that we do things. We are promising these high salaries to people that say they're going to come over, these whale hunters, I like to call them, like, oh, I got a client, so-and-so, I'm going to bring them in. And they get these guaranteed salaries that very rarely pan out. And that just hurts all the lawyers. Not only does it hurt all the lawyers, who else does it hurt? The clients. There was actually someone on LinkedIn this morning that was commenting about how the starting salary for a first-year associate at BigLaw is $225,000. These are people that really don't know how to do anything. Like, they're super smart, really smart people, top of their class, but they come in day one making $225,000. Now they're able to do that because they're billed out at $600 plus an hour to the clients. So clients are paying to train these people at these prices. It's all getting passed down to the clients. And so the fees, in my opinion, are too high. And then we're wasting money on other things, and the lawyers aren't getting enough. So I devised a whole structure where I wanted a flat, decentralized organization with partner level only attorneys that don't need to be trained, people that are the same quality of attorneys that you would have as partners in Big Law. But instead, these people go into a virtual environment where the firm has very low expenses and everyone's paid on a fair and transparent basis by a mathematical formula. Everyone's paid exactly the same, including me. You don't get become the CEO of the firm and suddenly get all these like hidden things because no one knows what everyone else is making. And so I wanted to create a culture of fairness and equality. And I also wanted to allow attorneys to work whenever and wherever they wanted. When COVID happens, then I started this firm before COVID. So now some of what I'm saying isn't as revolutionary because people have accepted the work at home thing. But I created this model before COVID. And when COVID happened, the firm didn't even bat an eye because we were all working remotely. We were all tied in through systems. It just has always been part of our culture and how we work. And so my mantra as far as clients is that we're able to provide higher value. At the end of the day, it's all about value. It's about providing the same quality of expertise at a lower fee than some of our larger competitors. But then I also put an emphasis on understanding business and understanding clients. Nothing rubbed me worse. And let me just tell you, my best associate, I love her to death. But we're working on this case, and it involved reviewing all these financial documents. And I realized she didn't really know what she was looking at. And I went into her office one morning. I got there and I said, "What's the difference between a balance sheet and a profit and loss?" And she looked at me with this blank, empty stare. And I said, "So and so," I said, "Google that right now when I leave your office, because you're being paid a lot of money to understand really basic business stuff. And you need to understand this stuff if you're going to become a better lawyer. So I don't care if you have some poli-sci major and went to Harvard. That means absolutely nothing to me. I want you to be a business major. I want you to be former in-house counsel. I want you to have owned a business, have some kind of common sense, because I find at the end of the day, if you understand business and you understand your clients, you're going to serve them better. And our clients like that too. It shows. They know. They're like, wow, these lawyers actually understand business. They don't want to just write a memo for the sake of writing a memo.
Great. What do you see as some mistakes that, whether it's your clients or the maybe opposition of your clients, like what are some of the biggest mistakes you see business owners and entrepreneurs making?
That's somewhat hard to answer. So I might be a little over the place. I'm going to try to cover a scale of sophistication. Because now that I am at a smaller firm and we are more boutique, we represent really everyone. I don't turn anyone down. I believe everyone's entitled to representation. So we have clients that are very new. Sometimes they're some of our best clients because they come to us and they acknowledge that they need a lawyer, that they should rely on a lawyer. I will find, and I don't know if this has always been pervasive or if this is more part of the YouTube culture, that people bootstrap, and they should. I'm not saying spend all your money on legal bills before you can afford it. You got to be common sense, and part of what we do is help our clients understand what they should spend money on and what they shouldn't spend money on when it comes to legal. But I find a lot of clients, probably sub $1 million in revenue, are just doing everything on their own. And oftentimes they get to $1 million and then they're like, okay, now I can afford a lawyer. And that's a good time for them to come in and revamp. And we do that. Or, and this is what I see sometimes, or they still try to kind of do it themselves. And what I've noticed is what it takes is probably a pretty nasty lawsuit. And then they're super stressed out, losing sleep, worst thing in the world. And they spend six figures on a legal bill, and they're like, I will never do that again. I will spend a little bit of money up front as insurance rather than spend a lot of money on the back end when a catastrophe happens. So that's kind of my overall comment on the use of legal services. But I see it in a lot of different things. So like mergers and acquisitions. I see people trying to do the deals themselves. They think they might get a sense. They see some video of Roland Frazier or something saying, "Oh yeah, it's easy. It's easy to buy a business. You can just use these forms." There are a lot of different nuances. There are things you just don't know unless you don't know, and you just can't see it. Little things that can go wrong that can make all the difference. So, for instance, let's thank God my client didn't rely on his business broker. My client, he was older, and he saw the importance of an attorney. He used a business broker up until the deal was being negotiated. He should have hired me before the LOI. He didn't, but he waited till after the first draft, so the PSA had gone by and were somewhat negotiated. Little late in the process, so that was disruptive. That should have happened earlier, but he didn't know. See, some of these people just don't know what they don't know. But at least he went and hired me, and I saw that there was a large component of seller financing. So he was the seller on this transaction, and he was himself financing a large portion of it. So you're going to take the risk that you don't get paid. Now, you got to look at who's making this note. It wasn't the buyer individually. It was the company. So if the new company, the buying entity, so if the buying entity just decided to file bankruptcy if it didn't work out, my client could never get paid. So we're on this conference call with this broker, and I'm like, we absolutely need a personal guarantee on this. And he's like, well, I don't see why you need a personal guarantee. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, do you do this for a living? You don't see why you would need a personal guarantee? Because I want to make sure my client gets paid or has some kind of resource. And even a personal guarantee is only as good as, the assets of the person that you're suing. So you even have to look at that. But this is a lot of what I'll see in the M&A world. I've seen as more pervasive, as where these brokers are just kind of cobbling these deals together, and they're thinking, well, we'll just use middle of the road forms prepared by an attorney, and we'll just have the deal close. The problem with middle of the road forms is they don't serve one party or the other. They're just middle of the road. So one person might be left out, and then people aren't understanding some of the nuances of these transactions. Another thing I see this a lot with entrepreneurs, and I made a presentation on this and I posted it to the YouTube channel, the Johnsen Law YouTube channel, and my last name is spelled Johnsen. So Johnsen Law YouTube. There's a video on how to buy a business, how to sell a business. There's one on governing document disasters. So I was like, well, don't take my word for it, how important operating agreements are and how much nuance there is in operating agreements and why you shouldn't spend $500 on LegalZoom to buy this thing that really does nothing for any of the individual members, why you should spend some money and investment on it. I went through lawsuits that I've seen over the years, things that I've actually dealt with over the way provisions were worded or the lack of that provision even being addressed.
Yeah, I've been through a few of those myself where, years later, it's when everything's going fine, it's never an issue. But once there's a disagreement or once, God forbid you're losing money on a deal or something, it can get dicey. So I know from my own experience, it's very helpful to do it up front.
Yeah. I've been married, and this is what I tell people. I've been married for 14 years. And that's a long time. A lot of people get divorced, unfortunately, before that. And I think that the statistic is 60%. And we have things like sex holding a marriage together, maybe having children holding a marriage together. When we form a business, it's a marriage, except we don't have sex. Maybe we do, I don't know. But we don't have children, right? Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So you don't have those other things possibly holding it together. My guess is, and I've never seen a published statistic on it, my guess is business divorce rates are way higher than 60%. And when you're forming it, yeah, it's like everything's going to go great. That's the mindset you should have, is that this is going to go well. But there needs to be a contract between the owners that account for different situations that might happen in the future. And it needs to be done up front, not at the ends.
Yeah, and the fact is, there was some case study in business school of I think the Fortune 500 from the 90s. Like only maybe 10% of the companies are still in existence. Again, a lot of
That's
mergers,
crazy.
a lot of obviously the dot-com crisis and financial crisis maybe flushed a bunch out, but yeah, the amount of businesses that actually are able to adapt through multiple cycles is extremely low on the public company end, and I'm sure on the small business and family business end. I'm just thinking about the type of businesses when we were in high school and college. I mean, a lot of them just the technology or the industry doesn't exist. There's no more. There's one Blockbuster Video in the world. Sure. And Blockbuster could have bought Netflix for a couple $100 million or $1 billion, and then a couple of years later, Netflix is taken over and Blockbuster is gone.
I was telling my kids the other day how Blockbuster worked. They thought it sounded kind of neat. They still don't understand it. But I told them, I was like, yeah, we are all excited on a Friday night to go and look at the new releases up on the wall. Started to sound like an old person. Jeez.
Oh no, it's crazy. I mean, even just the fact that I still had a phone. I remember a rotary phone. Our first phone was rotary, and I think they did like this YouTube thing where they put a bunch of kids in a room to see if they could figure out how to actually dial out a phone number, kind of an escape room.
I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah. And then I know a colleague in New York was like on a Caribbean vacation with their kids, and they were in a car with the manual windows. And their kids, this might be more of a privilege thing, but that the kids couldn't figure out. They're like, "Where's the button for the window?" They're like, "No, you have to like manually roll the window down."
Oh man, I wish they still had manual windows. Maybe automatic windows. I just don't want my headlights turning on. I don't want my windshield wipers turning on. Definitely don't want my car driving for me. I'm sorry. I do. I sound like an old person. I don't give a shit. I'm super good at technology, and we leverage technology for a lot of stuff, but I do not want the Chinese hacking into my car.
Yeah.
That's like a hard no. That's like a hard no for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, the whole thing with electric cars, and obviously you're in Houston, so probably partial not to electric cars, but it's from what I've read and seen, like the amount of lithium and the amount of raw materials from the earth to make everything electric, like we're a long way away from that part of the technology and from everything being all electric. I think, at least a generation away. And frankly, the carbon footprint of digging up all those chemicals and all those rare earths for the batteries is maybe, I don't even know if it's the environment or not.
I saw a graphic. Who knows how accurate it is? I tend to believe it. It seemed to be a pretty fair assessment, and it looked to be maybe 30-40% less. It's definitely not zero, but it was an improvement. My friend is in the battery business. He did battery backups for large data centers, and now he actually works at data centers. And so he's very into like electricity and all those kinds of things. So what he says, and I tend to believe this too, is that the grids just would not support everyone plugging one of these into our house. So in order for everyone to have one, you would essentially have to create big parking lots, like some kind of grid structure where the power source would be there, and then your car could drive there at night, which really isn't that far-fetched. I don't think they're that far from that. So it goes to your front door, and then you push a button, and then it goes to the grid, and then it's just waiting for you the next morning. I think that's probably pretty feasible if they came up with a solution like that. Then it begs the question, why would we make infrastructure improvements like that if who says you need to own a car? I'm not sure if we are going to own a car in 10, 20 years. I feel like it almost, if business gets involved, it could get to the point where you're paying $40 a month or something nominal to just have ride on demand. Now,
Yeah.
that's not going to be rural areas. It's only going to be in New York City and LA and San Francisco, places where people live in cities. I don't know what they're going to do in rural areas. I don't know if they're ever going to be able to go fully electric there.
Yeah, it's tough to say. Although, I mean, if the mileage keeps increasing, and the one thing about the grid is, with for example, a good Tesla Powerwall in an area that actually has enough solar. I mean, it's not out of the question that people can be off the grid in those areas if the technology does increase.
That's crazy. That's right. You're trying to predict technology, and that's what I'm trying to do right now, which is proven wrong. Bill Gates invented this amazing thing called the iPhone, and he had no idea that it would do what it does now. So you might even be able to invent something, but seeing what can become in 10 years is like almost impossible.
Yeah, pretty incredible. By the way, I think Steve Jobs, not Bill Gates. Just you missed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Fuck. Damn it. Sorry. Totally Steve Jobs. I can't believe I said Bill Gates. Yes.
Yeah, and although Al Gore invented the internet.
Yes, he did.
What's it? Back to the Future. We're already past in Back to the Future, when they went and with the hoverboards and all that stuff. And I think
those were so cool.
Are we past Terminator at this point? I think we're past where
Probably.
The original Terminator was in the future too. So
probably, but I want a hoverboard.
And AI hasn't completely ruined humanity yet.
Not yet.
Are you worried at all about that for legal? And obviously, I'm sure you obviously still review
That's
all
a
your.
good point.
Have you played around with ChatGPT on the sort of a write me?
I more than play around. So we use ChatGPT for copy, but we'll use some other AI stuff for copy as well. So
is there a legal specific one? Is there something that's like kind of custom for the legal industry?
Yes, they're starting to build it out. So I talk to our lawyers about this a lot because I want to really stay ahead of technology and everything. But let me say, so for the business, actually my businesses, I have multiple businesses. We haven't even talked about the other ones. I use AI for marketing. Okay, so for copy, for video editing, for things like that. And what that has enabled me to do is now the level of content that I can produce at the cost is ridiculous compared to even what it was a year or two ago. I would have had to contemplate hiring someone and paying them thousands a month just to create articles and create all these things. I have an amazing virtual assistant over in the Philippines that I've trained to use these tools, and she can just pump stuff out with very little, if any, involvement from me. So as a business owner, I see this as a massive opportunity, and I teach classes to realtors. I call them ChatGPT for realtors. I think any small business, any solopreneur, there's no longer an excuse not to do content galore. You just have to be, and you don't even have to be the one sitting there doing it. You just have to know how it works, and you have to create systems and processes and train someone to do it, and then just dump videos, just tons and tons of videos, and then recycle content into a bunch of different stuff. As far as legal uses, ChatGPT is nowhere near there yet. It can help brainstorm some provisions. Okay, great. I can also go on Google and look for provisions. I also probably have provisions in other documents I have. There's also companies out there that have been selling forms and different tools for lawyers forever. So is it better? Maybe. Is it like groundbreaking? Like, oh my God, we've never seen anything like this before? No. And we've had forms. We've had different things where we pulled language from different sources. So we're not there yet. Could it? I think it has disrupted if there's a savvy business owner, maybe for things like policies, procedures, and more employment type stuff, like internal things that you're using in the company. But look, that's been around too. People have gone to ADP and they've just gotten a free handbook from them. So again, I don't view that as like, oh my God, because it's already been around. Same thing with forms. LegalZoom's been around for decades and decades and decades as competition to lawyers. But is it really competition? It sells something that's very neutral. It's not the best tool most of the time. ChatGPT, you can probably make a better tool, but you have to also understand what to ask it. What I have found with some clients, what they've done that are good with ChatGPT, they'll take one of their old contracts, they'll ask something like Claude to if it has suggestions to improve on it, so they'll attach the document, and then they'll send it to me. So that might cut down on some of our legal bill. And as lawyers, we're going to have to figure out, does that mean that we just get paid less overall? Does that mean that we increase our hourly rate in anticipation of using the technology and leveraging it more and spending less time on things? Does it mean that we start flat billing more projects and then ultimately our effective rate is still higher? I don't know. I think I think it's a combination of all those things. We're still trying to figure it out, and it's going to affect any form-based practice area more than it will affect a non-form-based practice. Like, you're not going to be able to be in federal court writing briefs using AI. Like, not even close. Not even 0.1% close. You're not even there.
Gotcha. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next, 10 years or so. I was reading about the doctors. Apparently, like, AI in some cases is as good or better than a doctor at like reviewing blood work, health history, and sort of making predictions. I'd also read about some. I think it was more on the tort side, class action side of like trying to use AI to kind of look at the history of cases and try to figure out the likelihood of an award. Is going through the history of every case, how the judge went to try to predict winning outcomes, and then pursue certain cases that had the higher chance of winning.
It's cool. All that stuff's really cool. And, as far as I'm concerned, there's no point in being scared of it. And it's not, the ship sailed and it's going to continue to sail, and it's going to affect everyone, not just lawyers and not just marketers. It's going to affect everyone. So that will be the true telling, I think, is in 10 years when it finally affects everyone.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah.
What happens to our economy? I don't know.
Yeah. Every previous transition, there was still more jobs, and net was, kind of an increase in efficiency was still positive. The difference here is this is happening faster. It took 20, 30 years for like the automobile to really take over and have mass adoption, but this is going to be over a much shorter period of time. I went to an event here in Puerto Rico yesterday, and Brock Pierce spoke, and we're just talking about the adoption of blockchain versus the adoption of AI. Yeah. And, he said, AI is happening way faster than blockchain. Blockchain, you need to make a conscious decision to adapt it, and, involves, money or smart contracts, but AI is affecting you whether you like it or not in almost every part of your life.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of years. So what are your goals for this year?
Man, my goals are to grow the firm. My goals are to grow the title company, the other businesses, and I'm going to double down in real estate for myself. I'm going to be really looking for opportunities. I've been saving a little powder for that. I'm looking at an office building now, which isn't the sexiest thing. And it's not like, downtown Class A office. So viewers, don't get all scared. I get that those are vacant. They're not being filled. This is like a local niche, small office building that's pretty much fully leased, and I would occupy the rest of the premises. So it allows my business to be there. I'm kind of at that stage, and this wouldn't even be for the law firm, which is virtual. This is for my title company, which does need a physical space. So things like that, other opportunities in real estate. I'm kind of waiting for the shoe to drop. Maybe I will, maybe I wouldn't. I mean, who knows? I guess they're wrong with the stock market. I waited for years and years and years, and then it took a stupid pandemic that no one could have predicted for there to be a correction. So who knows?
Yeah, and frankly, with the way inflation, whatever real inflation is, even if the market could be up 10% a year, 15% a year, and it's really net isn't 15%. If you believe shadow stats on sort of how inflation used to be calculated versus how it's calculated now, I feel like inflation, is underreported.
Yeah, I don't like inflation. So it's terrible.
Yeah,
terrible.
It's sort of the lesser of two evils. I think with the debt the way it
is.
You
have to have some inflation.
Yeah. Yeah, and my gut has said. I mean, the Fed's already sort of mentioned there's a pivot. There'll be rate cuts this year, and I think ultimately inflation's the lesser of two evils, and it's somewhat of a hidden tax, but it's I think it's something we're going to be just kind of dealing with for a generation. Yeah. Great. Well, let us know. Again, you mentioned your website and your YouTube earlier, but go through how everybody can find you and get a hold of you, and we'll make sure we put it in the show notes as well.
Okay, sure. So I mentioned the Johnsen Law YouTube channel is Johnsen Law, JOHNSEN, and the website is johnsonlaw.com. Last name spelled the same way. And then the title company is Fidelity Lake Houston. There's a YouTube channel and the website. So any of those websites, you can get a hold of me. I offer free consultations to anyone through the law firm, 15 minutes. If anyone wants to chat about any issue, it doesn't matter. Don't be shy. And I can talk to you about anything, 15 minutes for free. And
you're obviously based in Texas, but for many business matters, you handle contract law.
We have a national scope. We close transactions all over the country. We do real estate stuff all over the country. Litigation, we have to be more state specific, but we do have attorneys in seven different states. My title company, I close residential throughout Texas. I'll close commercial deals all over the country. So I'm in the Fidelity network, and I have the ability to close all over the country. Some states can kind of be a pain in the ass, so that's why I only do it for commercial properties.
Gotcha. And I know, obviously, business owners, real estate. I had a great call with one of your other partners last week that works a lot with business owners that are potentially looking to sell and exit their company. Any other practice areas we missed?
Well, you're pretty plugged in with the investment world. So syndications, creation of funds, taking companies public. We have a robust securities practice. We have a robust litigation practice. We do a lot of partnership divorces and non-compete litigation, things like that. We've done tons of. We have a heavy real estate practice. And then I really serve as outside general counsel. In addition to mergers and acquisitions, I serve as outside counsel for a lot of different companies. That's one piece that I think a lot of companies don't have. It costs a lot to get to the point where you can hire a full-time, legit general counsel, one that truly has depth of experience, knowledge, has been practicing for a long time. I do it on a fractional basis, and it's meetings, it's calls, it's being involved with the leadership team just to make sure everyone's on the same page and can avoid pitfalls. And I'm able to do that at a very reasonable cost.
That's awesome. Well, we've been friends a few years. Really glad we caught up at this mastermind, and always enjoy chatting. And I'm sure the audience really appreciates some of the knowledge dropped in this pod here. So, thanks again for joining us, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.
That's all for this episode of Alternative Investor Mastermind. Now that you know the many alternative opportunities out there all up for the taking, you can finally become ultra connected and ultra wealthy. Get more valuable advice from the experts by subscribing to the show at alternativeinvestormastermind.com. Become a winner in the world of passive investing today in alternative investment strategies. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.